Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really distill the essence of knowledge. Today we're plunging into a question that's, well, it's as old as humanity itself, isn't it? How do we navigate this often crazy and out-of-control world to live a genuinely good life? I think so many of us strive for purpose, for happiness, but it's just so easy to feel overwhelmed. Or maybe you find that sense of joy, but it's surprisingly fleeting.
Yeah.
We're all searching for something solid, something lasting.
Precisely. And that human need for a practical philosophy, maybe a robust framework for living to navigate life's, well, inevitable challenges is absolutely timeless. Our sources today really highlight that ancient Stoicism, which was a school of thought flourishing back in Athens around 300 BC, specifically dedicated itself to answering that exact question: what is needed to live the best possible life? The Stoics were really convinced that if humans could truly grasp this answer, we could flourish, cultivate profound tranquility, even when things externally seem chaotic. It's a pursuit that I think still deeply resonates today.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's truly fascinating reading through these sources is being introduced to one of the most, well, practical and influential Stoic teachers, Epictetus. He didn't just teach Stoicism as, like, a collection of abstract theories you debate. Instead, he brilliantly organized the entire philosophy into this powerful, actionable framework. Three interconnected areas of study. You could almost think of it as a comprehensive operating system for living well, designed for really anyone to implement, like an internal instruction manual.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. These aren't just academic concepts to be
Yeah.
kicked around. Epictetus, whose teachings were so impactfully, meticulously compiled by his student Arian, he fundamentally presented Stoicism as an activity, a constant way of life, not just some theoretical construct. He didn't want his students to just know Stoicism, he wanted them to live it. He famously challenged them, didn't he? Saying something like, eat like a man, drink like a man, get dressed, get married, have children, lead the life of a citizen. Basically, show us all this so that we can see whether or not you have really learned something from the philosophers.
His framework, built on these three fundamental disciplines, it really does offer a comprehensive curriculum for self-mastery and, ultimately, for human flourishing in the broadest sense, a guide to becoming your most excellent self.
Okay, so our mission for you in this deep dive is clear then. We're going to unpack these three core disciplines: the discipline of perception, the discipline of action, and the discipline of will. We'll show how they seamlessly fit together to form a complete guide, a genuinely actionable Stoic operating system so you can live a genuinely good life no matter what circumstances pop up. We'll be drawing directly from the profound insights of Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and other foundational Stoic thinkers found right here in your shared sources. This isn't just history class, it's a toolkit for today. Let's dive in. 1. The foundational idea: what is truly up to us? The sphere of control. All right, so before we can even begin to explore those three disciplines, we need to establish the absolute bedrock, the foundation of all Stoic thought. It's this profound, yet often overlooked distinction between what is truly up to us and what categorically isn't. And this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea, is it? It's quite literally the key that unlocks genuine control over your well-being, your inner peace. It's the starting point for everything else.
It really is. And Epictetus states this fundamental principle with, well, striking clarity, almost like an imperative. He says that in life, our first job is this: to divide and distinguish things into two categories. Externals I cannot control, but the choices I make with regard to them I do control. And then he asks, where will I find good and bad in me and my choices? He is absolutely adamant that we possess this absolute autonomy in principle over what he terms our prohairesis. Now, that Greek term is incredibly rich. It encompasses our volition, our reason, our deepest desires, our intentions, and our reflexive consciousness. Think of it like your inner command center, right? Your moral compass. The one thing no external power, no boss, no critic, no event can ever truly touch or dictate. Epictetus considered this capacity, this power of choice and judgment, to be nothing less than a special gift from God, emphasizing its inherent, unimpeded nature within us. It's the core of our being, really, and over it we have the ultimate say.
So, if I'm getting this right, it's not just what we choose, but the actual faculty of choosing, that inner mechanism of our intention. That's the bit that's untouchable and entirely ours. That's a really powerful distinction. But for you, the listener, how does knowing what's up to us practically translate into a better life, a more fulfilling one? What's the real-world impact here beyond just understanding the concept?
Oh, it's everything, truly. The Stoics understood that if you make your happiness, your eudaimonia, that deep, flourishing sense of a well-lived life, dependent on things inherently outside your control, well, you're basically setting yourself up for guaranteed struggle. And let's be honest, this is a very common trap we all fall into, isn't it? I mean, think about it. If your sense of well-being hinges on a romantic relationship working out perfectly, or achieving a specific, often elusive career goal, or piling up certain possessions, or even just maintaining a particular physical appearance, then you effectively hand over your happiness to the whims of something or someone else. Our sources are quite direct about this, that path guarantees frustration and disappointment.
So it's not just about avoiding disappointment then. There's a deeper psychological benefit, something more proactive.
Absolutely. The profound liberation comes from deliberately focusing your energy, your mental and emotional resources, solely on what you can control: your judgments, your reactions, your choices, your prohairesis. When you do this, your happiness becomes, as the sources say, impregnable. It's always consistently in your power. It's the ultimate cognitive reframing, long before modern psychology even had a neat term for it. It gives you instant, undeniable agency over your emotional landscape. The Stoics believed that understanding this distinction is absolutely critical for achieving happiness and living a good life. They even viewed philosophy itself as a kind of therapy for the soul. It's about self-protection, yes, but in the most empowering, self-directed sense possible. It means your inner world, your true peace, can never be truly hijacked by external stuff.
2. The discipline of perception, mastering your mind and impressions. Okay, with that foundational idea firmly in place, knowing what's truly ours to command, let's move to the first pillar of this Stoic operating system, the discipline of perception. When Epictetus talks about perception, what exactly does he mean? Is it just about, seeing things, or is there a much deeper, more active layer to it, more than just observation?
Oh, it's definitely much deeper than just sensory input, yeah. The discipline of perception is fundamentally about how you interpret the world around you, how you process your own thoughts, and critically how you respond to that constant stream of impressions that appear to your mind. Epictetus emphasizes that impressions, or phantasia in the Greek, cover an incredibly broad spectrum. This can range from simple sensory stuff, like here is a dog, to more complex value judgments like money is highly desirable, or even profound philosophical insights like death is not an evil. The Stoics recognize that these impressions for us humans generally have a propositional structure, meaning they're either true or false.
Right, so even wanting a new car isn't just a feeling, it's tied to an impression we need to judge. Like having that car would make me happy.
Precisely. It's not just that coffee is hot, which is, generally factual. It's also the added layer that coffee is terrible, which is a judgment imposed on the sensory input. So the task of judging and interpreting these myriad impressions, rather than just passively accepting them, is considered the critical test of human rationality, consistency, and moral character. It's really where your true agency kicks in, where you decide what gets to shape your internal world.
I think it's so easy for us in our daily lives to fall into that trap, feeling like external events are the direct cause of our distress. Bad traffic, a rough day at work, an argument, we instinctively point to those things and say, that made me upset. How does the discipline of perception directly challenge this very common, almost ingrained belief?
This is where Stoicism offers such a radical and, frankly, immensely liberating perspective. It can truly shift your everyday experience. A central tenet repeated across our sources by figures like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius is this: it's not our pains or illnesses that upset us, but our judgments about them. Now, this isn't to deny the existence of pain or hardship, obviously, but it pinpoints the source of suffering. It means the external event itself is, in a profound Stoic sense, neutral. It just is. It's our interpretation, our assent to a particular impression about that event that generates our emotional response.
So it's the story we tell ourselves about the event that's the real source of the upset, not the event itself.
Exactly. The sources really drive this home. They state that it isn't the one who has it in for you and takes a swipe that harms you, but rather the harm comes from your own belief about the use, unquote. So when someone arouses your anger, know that it's really your own opinion fueling it. Quote, this highlights an absolutely crucial point. Distress is caused by our thoughts about things rather than by the things themselves. The event just is. Our suffering comes from the narrative, the judgment we impose upon it. It's the ultimate internal boundary setting,
Okay, if our judgments are indeed the problem, the root cause, then what's the practical solution? How do we actually master this discipline of perception day to day? It sounds like we need some tangible tools, not just like an intellectual understanding.
You're absolutely right. It's all about practice, consistent practice. Epictetus explicitly recommends testing impressions. This involves a deliberate, conscious process, subjecting every situation and thought to your reflexive rationality and understanding of what is good or bad or merely neutral. It's about cultivating a habit of pausing, taking a moment to breathe and reflect before automatically making a judgment or letting an emotion just take hold. When you encounter something that triggers a strong emotional reaction, you should, almost like a reflex, ask yourself two critical questions. Is this true? Is this within my control? That pause, that gap, creates a vital space for rational assessment and prevents you from being carried away by the impression, which is key to this whole thing.
Let's nail this down with a really practical, everyday example. What if someone insults you? Maybe a rude comment online, we all get those, or a cutting remark from a colleague. How would this Stoic framework guide your response? Moving from that automatic knee-jerk reaction to a more considered, thoughtful approach.
Great example. The sources actually break down an insult into a clear three-step process, very analytical. The first step, someone actually saying something offensive, is clearly not in your control. You can't dictate what others say or think. But the second step, internalizing it as offensive, that is entirely under your control. Here's where your rational assessment kicks in. You analyze it. Is this genuinely constructive criticism, maybe poorly delivered, or is it just a baseless attack? If it's true, if they've pointed out a fault, then okay, they've pointed out a fault that you can now address. So they've actually benefited you, even if it stung. You can learn from it.
So in that case, the insult is actually a gift, just poorly wrapped.
Exactly, a harsh mirror, perhaps. Now, if it's factually false or clearly not meant constructively, then, as Epictetus points out with this elegant logic, the joke is on them. They just look foolish for making an untrue or uncharitable statement. It's no skin off your nose if it doesn't match the truth of your character, right? And the third step, your reaction, is also entirely within your control. The key, then, is not to react impulsively to events. The only way their remark could truly cause you real and serious harm is if you were to let it provoke you into a state of anger, thereby sacrificing your inner peace, your tranquility. Otherwise, their words are just, well, words, air, devoid of power over your internal state unless you grant it to them.
Wow, that's a seriously powerful way to reframe insults. It totally puts you back in the driver's seat of your emotional state. And this sounds very applicable to emotional or verbal attacks. What about physical sensations like pain? Does the discipline of perception offer guidance there too? Because pain can feel so overwhelmingly physical, so immediate.
Absolutely it does. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, his personal journal, he found it incredibly helpful to think of pain as confined to a particular part of the body rather than allowing himself to become consumed by imagining it as more pervasive. He observed that pain is neither unendurable nor everlasting if you keep its limits in mind and do not add to it through your own imagination. Unquote. See, the insidious nature of pain is how it can try to dominate your entire mind, right? Spreading its influence beyond the localized sensation, becoming the whole story. But by focusing on its objective, limited nature, by not assenting to the impression that this pain will ruin everything or this pain is unbearable, one can cope much better. The message from the Stoics is unequivocally clear. Our attitude toward it, our judgment about it, determines how upset we become. This mental detachment doesn't magically erase the sensation, but it removes that added layer of suffering caused by our fearful or exaggerated interpretations. It's about seeing the difference between the raw sensation and the mental drama we often attach to it.
This feels like a profound simplification, really. Stripping away layers of unnecessary angst and drama. By rigorously applying the discipline of perception, you can fundamentally reclaim control over your emotional responses, which so often feel automatic and overwhelming. It's about recognizing that your mind is often complicit in the provocation of your own distress, and then consciously choosing a wiser, more rational response. This discipline isn't just a shortcut. It seems like a direct path to being well-informed about your internal life, giving you back your power to shape your inner peace. 3. The discipline of action, living in harmony with others and nature. Okay, so we've explored how Stoicism helps us refine our perception, master our internal judgments, making sure our inner command center is running smoothly. But once we've gained that clarity, once we have a clear map of what's up to us, how does this philosophy then guide our actions out in the world? What does the discipline of action entail, and how do we actually do good with this new understanding? How do we translate insight into behavior?
Right, so the discipline of action is all about living in accordance with your inherent nature as a rational, social being. That's key, rational and social. The sources tell us that living in agreement with nature isn't some vague hippie ideal. It specifically means fulfilling our natural potential for wisdom. Humans, by their very design, excel when they think clearly and reason well about their lives, and this, in essence, is living wisely. This discipline doesn't advocate for, withdrawing from the external world or ignoring your responsibilities, not at all. Instead, it's about developing the right attitude towards it, understanding your place, your duties, and acting virtuously within your sphere of influence. It's about engaging thoughtfully, not reactively, with the world and everyone in it, being a productive, ethical participant.
Can you elaborate a bit more on how this translates into specific actions or character traits? How do the Stoics concretely define what a virtuous action looks like? Because living wisely can still feel quite broad, maybe a bit abstract.
That's fair. The Stoics, drawing from earlier Greek philosophy, particularly Socrates, adopted the classic division of cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. What's crucial to understand, though, is that these aren't seen as separate, distinct qualities you collect independently, like merit badges. Rather, they are wisdom applied to our actions in different areas of life. So, for instance, justice is largely wisdom applied to the social sphere, our relationships with other people. Is how our rationality guides our interactions to be fair, equitable, and ultimately beneficial to the wider community.
Okay, so justice isn't just about following rules, but about wise application in our interactions, about fairness in action.
Exactly. And similarly, displaying courage and moderation involves mastering our fears and desires, respectively. These virtues are essentially tools to overcome what the Stoics called the unhealthy passions, things like excessive fear, unbridled desire, intense anger, or debilitating grief. Those passions would otherwise interfere with our ability to live in accord with wisdom and justice. So they're all interconnected aspects of a single, unified virtue, guiding us to act excellently in all areas of life, always directed towards a greater good.
This sounds like a powerful script for life, almost like figuring out your role in some grand production. How does Epictetus describe our individual roles within this discipline of action, especially when so much of life feels, well, dictated to us?
Epictetus offers a very powerful and, I think, relatable analogy here. He suggests thinking of your life as if you were an actor in a play. In this play, he notes, you haven't chosen your role, you don't get to decide what happens, and you have no control over how long it will last. This immediately snaps us back to that foundational distinction between what is and isn't up to us, doesn't it? Rather than fruitlessly fighting against all these uncontrollable elements, the plot twists, the duration of your scene, the other actors, your task is to play the role you find yourself in as best as you can. This means focusing intently on your actions and choices within your given circumstances, excelling at the part you've been assigned, whatever it may be, with dignity, skill, and purpose. It's about embodying virtue in the present moment, whatever that moment asks of you, without complaining about the script itself. Play your part well.
That's a great analogy for accepting our circumstances and finding meaning within them. But how does this discipline, the discipline of action, inform our daily interactions? Even something as fundamental as how we speak. Our words have such an immense impact, for good or ill.
Indeed they do, and the Stoics were very aware of that. One very practical exercise drawn from the sources, particularly Epictetus, is the injunction to speak little and well. Now, this isn't just about reducing your word count or being quiet for the sake of it. It's about elevating the quality and purpose of your communication. It challenges you, the listener, to define what well truly means for you. Epictetus himself mentions moving beyond ordinary things, like chattering about food or gossip, to more meaningful and impactful topics that uplift, inform, or genuinely connect. This practice, therefore, isn't just about speaking less, it's about speaking with deliberate purpose, with value, ensuring your words contribute positively and thoughtfully to the conversation or situation, reflecting your rational, social nature. It's about conscious communication, making every word count.
We briefly touched on anger when discussing perception and how our judgments fuel it. How does handling anger fit into this discipline of action, especially when we're interacting with others? And anger can feel like such a natural, even necessary response to injustice or harm.
Right. Seneca, who wrote extensively on anger, described it as nothing less than a temporary madness. Pretty strong words. He emphatically insists that we don't need anger to respond to acts committed against us or our loved ones. And this is a crucial point because many people assume anger is necessary for motivation or defense, right? Seneca argues that it's always better to act calmly from a sense of loyalty, duty, or justice than to rage for revenge. Even if anger might seem to spur someone to action in the short term, Seneca counters that it's profoundly more effective, more rational, and more virtuous to act under the guidance of the virtues of courage and justice. This is a clear, unambiguous call to choose reasoned, virtuous action over impulsive, emotionally charged reactions. The Stoic ideal, in fact, advocates for us to live for the other person and to actively cultivate a duty to be kind and forgiving towards others. Making our actions a reflection of our highest ethical self rather than our basest passions, it's about being effective and constructive, not just expressive.
You mentioned living in agreement with nature as a core tenet of this discipline, and you also brought up God-given nature earlier. How does a sense of higher purpose or a connection to something larger, like God or nature, factor into the discipline of action for a Stoic? For a modern listener, this might sound quite spiritual or even religious. How should we understand that?
That's an excellent question, and it's important to clarify the Stoic view for a contemporary audience because it can be misunderstood. For Epictetus, this connection is absolutely central to what it means to be human and rational. He believed we are uniquely equipped with the capacity to take a synoptic view of divine providence, a kind of big picture view. Our primary distinction from other animals, he argues, is our ability to reflect on everything we experience and to interpret it as contributors to God's providential government. In simpler terms, it's our unique capacity to see the grand rational order in the universe and understand our part in it, rather than just react instinctively like other creatures. Now, this isn't necessarily about a personal anthropomorphic deity like in many religions. For the Stoics, God is generally understood not as a personal being, but rather as a rational principle within nature itself. It's the organizing, animating, and inherent intelligence of the cosmos. The logos.
Okay, so it's more about finding meaning and purpose within the cosmic design, even if we don't understand all its nuances, and then aligning our actions with that larger rational order.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the universe operates according to rational laws, and our human rationality is like a small spark of that larger cosmic reason. By acting rationally, virtuously, and socially, we are aligning our individual will with the universal will of nature, or the logos. Epictetus constantly emphasizes proper human conduct through those two key practices, attending to impressions carefully and using impressions correctly. He relates this practice directly to our God-given nature, our capacity for reason. So acting in agreement with nature is, in essence, aligning our individual rationality with the universal rationality of the cosmos, fulfilling our distinctive human purpose. It means our actions become a conscious participation in the grand design, no matter how small our role might seem.
This is a really powerful framework. By embracing the discipline of action, it feels like you, the listener, gain a clear path for purposeful and ethical living. It's about consciously choosing to act in alignment with your best self, understanding your unique role in the world, and striving to contribute positively. And it's built on that profound understanding that the good of a rational creature is in society, emphasizing our interconnectedness and our fundamental duty to one another. It makes every action potentially meaningful. 4. The discipline of will, embracing what is beyond our control. Okay, so far we've explored mastering our thoughts with perception and guiding our actions with action. Now let's turn to the discipline of will. This sounds like it gets to the very core of our motivations, our deepest desires, our fears, perhaps our greatest challenges. This feels like the final boss level of Stoicism, maybe.
Huh. You could say that. It absolutely is, in many ways, the culmination of Stoic practice. It primarily deals with our desires, orexis, and our aversions, eklesis. It's also about how we consciously approach the inevitable, uncontrollable aspects of life: fate, adversity, loss, and ultimately death. Epictetus is quite explicit, even stark, in his guidance here. He states that we must take away desire altogether for external things. That's a big ask. We need to redirect that powerful emotional energy. Instead, he instructs us to transfer avoidance, eklesis, only to the things which are within the power of the will, meaning redirect your aversion away from external circumstances like illness or poverty, and focus it intensely on your own internal landscape, your judgments and choices, particularly faulty or unvirtuous ones.
Wow, so instead of actively avoiding, say, getting stuck in traffic, I should be actively avoiding the judgment that traffic is inherently bad and the anger that follows.
Exactly. You transfer the aversion from the external event, which you can't control, to your internal, potentially unvirtuous response, which you can control. It also means actively choosing not to feel anger, nor resentment, or envy, nor pity, because these two stem from our internal judgments about external events rather than the events themselves. It's about profound emotional re-education, not just suppression, training your deepest inclinations towards what truly matters your character.
That sounds like an incredibly challenging undertaking, a total rewiring of our instinctual reactions almost. What's the ultimate goal of such rigorous self-control, this deep management of our desires and aversions? What does the Stoic get out of it at the end of the day? What's the payoff?
The payoff is huge, according to the Stoics. They unequivocally claim that virtue is both necessary and sufficient for living a good life, for eudaimonia. Now, this is a truly radical assertion, especially in a world that constantly chases external markers of success or happiness, right? They go so far as to say that a truly virtuous person does possess all that he needs to fulfill himself, to live well, to have his desires satisfied. Because the only true desire is for virtue itself. Happiness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about fleeting pleasure, hedon. It's defined by Zeno, the founder, as a good flow of life, and by Seneca as peacefulness and constant tranquility. Crucially, they considered this state of happiness to be an all-or-nothing affair, complete at any moment once virtue is achieved. It's not something you accumulate over time or that can be increased by duration or lost through circumstance. It's an inner joy, a gaudium, that arises directly and purely from virtue itself, an impregnable state, immune to external fluctuations. It's an internal fortress.
Okay, but life inevitably throws challenges and hardships our way, often when we least expect them. It can feel like we're constantly battling against circumstances. How does this discipline help us cultivate a deep and lasting resilience in the face of that adversity, rather than just being crushed by it?
This is where the discipline of will really shines. For the Stoics, adversity is fundamentally reframed. It's not seen as an evil, not inherently bad. Rather, it's part of life, and significantly an opportunity to learn something about ourselves and to improve our characters. Seneca, who certainly knew adversity, he experienced deep personal tragedy, exile, and eventually faced a forced suicide. He famously argued that there is no worse luck than unending luxury and wealth. Why? Because it makes us lazy, complacent, ungrateful, and greedy. Such a life, devoid of struggle, lacks the necessary friction for growth.
So a life of constant ease is actually a disadvantage? It's really counterintuitive for most people, I think.
Precisely. It denies us the very crucible in which character is forged. Conversely, Seneca suggests God, like a trainer, has matched you with a rough youngster, meaning a difficult challenge so you can become an Olympic victor, per son. But as he bluntly notes, that doesn't happen without sweat. The message is clear. Obstacles only feed you and make you stronger. It's an idea Marcus Aurelius powerfully called turning the obstacle upside down. Every challenge, every setback becomes fuel for self-improvement, an opportunity to practice virtue, a chance to deepen your resilience.
That's a really powerful reframing. Seeing adversity as a training ground, almost like a gym for your character. Are there specific mental practices or techniques the Stoics employed to cultivate this resilience, to proactively prepare for the inevitable rough patches?
Yes, absolutely. One of the most potent techniques is what they called the premeditation of adversity, or premeditatio malorum in Latin. This involves patiently visualizing every major type of misfortune, one at a time, as if it were already happening to them. So a Stoic might mentally picture themselves already in exile, in poverty, bereaved, or suffering from a terrible illness. Now, this isn't about morbidly dwelling on negativity. It's a deliberate mental preparation, a kind of dress rehearsal for hardship. This technique, which modern behavioral psychology recognizes as stress inoculation, effectively builds resilience by mentally rehearsing for setbacks. By confronting potential difficulties in your mind beforehand, you diminish their shock value, you strip them of the power to surprise and overwhelm you, and you prepare yourself to respond calmly and rationally should they actually occur. It's like building emotional calluses before you even get the blister, you know?
Okay, this sounds like a profound level of acceptance, but maybe there's a fine line here. Does this mean that Stoics simply passively accept everything that happens without striving for change or improvement? Isn't there a risk of becoming complacent or fatalistic?
Not passively at all. That's a really common misconception about Stoicism, that it's just grim resignation. It's actually about reasoned and active acceptance. Marcus Aurelius encourages us to accept what happens and act in response as best we can. The key is that second part, act as best we can. He suggests contemplating that universal nature's impulse was to create an orderly world. It follows, then, that everything now happening must follow a logical sequence. Quote, this perspective, whether you view nature as a rational system, a kind of cybernetic feedback loop, or even just blind fate, it leads to the same practical response. Accept what happens and act in response as best we can. The Stoics understood that our role is to align our individual will, our pro-heresies, with the grand nature of the cosmos, recognizing that some things are simply beyond our direct influence. It's not about resignation, but about harmonizing your efforts with the flow of reality, making the absolute most of what is within your power. It's strategic acceptance.
Aligning our will with the cosmos, that's still quite a challenging concept to grasp, I think. It sounds almost mystical, maybe too grand for everyday life. Is there an analogy that helps clarify this idea? accepting fate while still maintaining our agency, still striving for our best.
Epictetus provides a wonderful analogy, actually, using the image of skilled ball players. He observes, none of them cares about the ball, as if that were something good or bad, but only about throwing it and catching it. That's what athletic skill and technique and speed and good judgment consist in. He continues by saying that if players become anxious or fearful about the ball itself, worried about its intrinsic value, is it a good ball, a bad ball, the game devolves into a brawl, not a skillful contest. In this analogy, the ball represents external circumstances, those indifferent things in life beyond our control. Wealth, health, reputation, other people's opinions, you name it. The true skill, our virtue and agency, lies solely in how we play the game of life with those indifferent externals, how we respond to them, how we use them, not in what the externals themselves are. The point isn't to get the best of all, but to play best with whatever ball life throws you.
That makes it much clearer, actually. And it brings to mind a really powerful anecdote from the sources that perfectly encapsulates this principle of the discipline of will, one that truly puts this idea of internal valuables into sharp perspective.
Ah, yes. The story of Stilbo. It's truly illuminating, isn't it? A classic. When his home city of Megara was captured, his children and wife lost, and he emerged alone from the, conflagration, Demetrius the city sacker, a man notorious for the destruction he wrought, asked Stilbo if he had lost anything. And Stilbo's calm and profound reply was, I have all my valuables with me. She wasn't being facetious, nor was he in denial. He meant the qualities of a just, a good, and an enlightened character, and indeed the very fact of not regarding as valuable anything that is capable of being taken away.
Yeah.
This story is the essence of the discipline of will. True value, your true valuables, reside solely within your character and your choices, untouched by external devastation. They are truly impregnable.
And finally, how does this discipline help us confront the ultimate uncontrollable, the one thing none of us can escape? Our own mortality. It's a fear that often paralyzes us, or at least lurks in the background.
Seneca urges us, with his characteristic directness, maybe even a touch of impatience, to remember the brute fact that we shall die. Just face it, we often operate under this unconscious assumption that we'll live to a ripe old age, right? And as a result, we postpone our plans, our dreams, our true living until some vague, indefinite future. Retirement, maybe? He kind of mocks those who postpones all their plans and dreams until retirement, as if life only truly begins then. The Stoic task, however, is not to strive to make our lives last as long as possible. Instead, we ought simply to make sure that we enjoy and make full use of each day as it comes, not forgetting that it could perhaps be our last. This acute awareness of mortality isn't meant to induce fear or morbidity, but rather to free us. It's a powerful reminder to live fully, purposefully, and virtuously now in the present moment, because that is the only moment we truly possess and have control over. It sharpens our focus on what truly matters, right here, right now.
The discipline of will, then, offers this profound path to resilience and inner peace. It empowers you to manage your desires and aversions, accept fate with reasoned equanimity, and confront mortality with clarity and purpose. The ultimate insight from this discipline isn't just about acceptance, is it? But about recognizing that your true wealth resides solely within your character, completely untouched by external forces. It truly provides a strong foundation against life's inevitable storms, making your inner joy, your tranquility, essentially invulnerable. 5. The Stoic operating system. An integrated approach. Okay, it's abundantly clear now that these three disciplines, perception, action, and will, aren't just isolated practices you pick and choose from like a buffet. They feel like components of a larger, intricately designed system. How do they truly work together as a cohesive operating system for navigating life? And why is that integration so crucial?
They are, as you say, deeply intertwined. You can't really fully practice one without engaging the others. It's impossible. Think of it as a continuous dynamic feedback loop, an internal ecosystem of self-mastery, if you like. Your perception, how you judge and interpret an impression or an event, directly influences your subsequent action. It has to. If you perceive an external event as catastrophic and you assent to that judgment, your actions will likely be impulsive, probably driven by fear or anger. Conversely, if you apply the discipline of perception to recognize that event as merely indifferent and your distress is coming from your judgment, well, you open up the possibility for a more rational, virtuous action.
Got it. So clarity and perception leads directly to better, more considered action.
Precisely. And this is where the discipline of will comes right back in. Your will, which governs your desires and aversions, shapes what you seek and what you avoid. This profoundly impacts both your perception of things, what you value, what you fear, and your capacity for appropriate actions. If your will is trained to desire virtue above all else and to abate from vice, it supports clear perception and right action. Let's use that insult example again quickly. The discipline of perception teaches you to pause, evaluate the impression of the insult, recognize the harm comes from your judgment. This cultivated perception then allows you to engage the discipline of action, choosing to respond calmly, maybe with kindness, maybe just by ignoring it rather than lashing out in anger. And this choice of virtuous action, in turn, is directly supported by the discipline of will, which has trained you to direct your aversion away from external slights and towards your own potential for an unvirtuous response. It helps you actively choose not to feel anger nor resentment. Each discipline reinforces and strengthens the others, creating this robust, integrated approach to living well. You can't truly master one without developing proficiency in the others. It really is a holistic system.
This really isn't just a set of ideas to study in some dusty old book, is it? This sounds like an entire approach to living, breathing, experiencing the world. Something you have to constantly practice.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Stoicism, especially as Epictetus taught it, is an activity, not just a theory. He was adamant about that. It demands considerable practice in listening, not just to external lectures or podcasts, but to your own internal dialogue, your judgments, your impulses. It requires a constant, diligent effort to integrate these principles into every aspect of daily living, every decision, every interaction, every thought. It's about taking responsibility than usual for one's thinking, recognizing that your thoughts aren't just random weather patterns, but are within your sphere of influence. The ultimate goal is profoundly practical: self-improvement and liberation from unethical impulses achieved through consistent, honest self-examination. It's a lifelong journey of becoming your best self actively every single day, like an athlete continually training their body and mind. Outro.
So we've journeyed through Epictetus's powerful framework, a truly ancient but incredibly relevant Stoic operating system for life. We started with the discipline of perception, learning how to master our internal judgments and differentiate between what's truly up to us and what isn't. Crucial first step. Then the discipline of action guided us to live purposefully and virtuously in the world, aligning with our rational and social nature. And finally, the discipline of will, empowering us to embrace what is beyond our control with grace, resilience, and that deep inner peace. These aren't just ancient philosophies. They really are a timeless operating system, a comprehensive guide for navigating the complexities of your life, offering profound freedom in pretty much any circumstance.
And here's maybe a final provocative thought for you to consider, drawing from the sources. Epictetus offers an extraordinary challenge. He invites you to ask whether you have mental and emotional and ethical resources that you have not properly grasped, untapped, and perhaps unconscious resources that can equip you to become more self-aware and more determined to make the best of yourself, whether in mundane situations or ones that are severely testing. This deep dive is really an invitation to begin exploring those profound, often hidden resources within yourself. They're likely already there.
How will you begin to activate your own Stoic operating system today? We hope this deep dive has given you some profound tools for your journey towards a genuinely good life.